Welcome back to THU TV. Thanks for joining me this morning where we've been talking about visual effects and animation. We've been talking about recruitment. We've been talking about the German visual effects industry. And right now I'm joined by Ed Hooks. Ed, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. If you follow animation and, conferences and things like that, Ed pops up everywhere. And I'm going to let Ed tell us why that is. What is it that you do, Ed?
Well, I teach acting theory to animators. I have a master class called Acting for Animators, and I've written a book on that subject. I've been doing this. I was an actor for 30 years. I was an actor.
Yeah.
And then in 1996, I was invited to teach animators for the first time. And I had the opportunity to experiment with animators at PDI DreamWorks.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and they were working on the movie Ants at the time, and with Woody Allen. And I was able to try to figure out the difference between animators and actors. And once I saw that there was a big difference, then I developed a way of teaching acting theory to animators instead of actors.
Yeah.
And that became the creative tail that wags my dog.
Now, clearly, people who read your book and see your workshops and see you talk love having that perspective because quite often, of course, they've not got any acting training.
That's correct.
But they're actually representing humans or animals or anything on screen.
Yeah.
So you fill this gap, don't you? I feel.
Well, it's true. I mean, not only that, historically, going back to the 1930s, 40s with Disney's heyday and all this, what they told animators was if they wanted to know about acting, they should go take an acting class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, acting classes are for stage actors, movie actors. And a lot of animators really don't want to get up in front of crowds of people and do things. And at any rate, in an animation, the actor is the animated character on screen. It's not the animator. So an animator doesn't need to learn how to be an actor. What an animator has to do is understand acting theory. You need to understand scene structure, the connections between thinking, emotion, and physical action. You need to understand the difference between regular reality and theatrical reality, which has to do with storytelling. So it's not enough just to endow a character with an illusion of life. You actually have to help your character act. And until I had this opportunity to work with animators, nobody had ever really done this.
Yeah.
So, and I came to the table with extensive background in acting and as an acting teacher, and I had written books on acting theory. So when I came across this, I said, oh, I see. So I was able to piece it together in a way that nobody had done before. And that still today is sort of the way it is. And that's the reason I show up at these events, as you note. It's because what I do is rather unique.
Yes, absolutely. And when you run a workshop, what is some of the first things that you'll show animators? Will it be a film that you appreciate? Will it be an animated film that you think has good animation? Will
Sure,
it be
both.
whatever? Yeah.
All of the above.
Right.
I start out with definitions. I start with, I say, okay, look, we're going to work on acting. What is it?
Yeah.
Let's define it. And people have different ideas. Most people will agree that that acting is pretending in some way, you know. And so I help them define it, that acting is behaving believably in pretend circumstances for a theatrical purpose. Okay?
Good definition. Yeah.
Behaving believably for believable to whom? To humans.
Yeah.
behaving believably in pretend circumstances. It's all about storytelling for a theatrical purpose. So there's a difference between regular reality and theatrical reality. In regular reality, you show 100% of everything.
Yeah.
Regular reality is what you have at the mall or the supermarket. Theatrical reality is compressed in time and space. It's selected. It has structure. And so the animators have to know this. They have to understand that a character, when you freeze frame a character, you should be able to say to that character, "What are you doing?" And the character should be able to answer in theatrical terms. This is the objective I'm pursuing. This is the action I'm playing to achieve that objective. And this is the obstacle or conflict that I'm overcoming.
Yes.
An animator needs to learn that emotion itself is not actable. So you can have a character that's happy or sad, and you can show that that is the character's emotional state, but that's not acting.
Right.
Acting
Right.
is actually doing something. Acting, emotion tends to lead to action. And so acting actually is action, objective, obstacle. Another thing, which is very interesting, I think, for animators at first to learn, animation is about movement,
Yes.
of course. Okay, well, when somebody's a new animator, they want to show everything with movement. Okay, they also want to show that a character is happy or sad or whatever with movement. This can lead to an acting error called indication,
Right. Yes.
okay?
Yep.
Because emotion itself is not actable. So you can show that a character has all kinds of emotions and that character can still not be acting. The emotion tends to lead to the action. So if you have a character that is, for example, afraid, is feeling the emotion of fear, then what does the character do about that? Do they confront the thing they're afraid of? Do they run away? Do they pull out a weapon? All those are actions. All those are acting
Yeah.
in response. So the emotion tends to lead to the action. All of this is what I teach.
In your workshops and in your teachings, do you mostly talk about animating human characters, or can this kind of concepts and things that you teach relate to other characters, animals?
Of course, it relates
creatures?
to animals. It relates to all the animals. Here's the thing, though. If you want your audience to empathize with an animal character, then you're going to have to give that animal some thinking and some emotion.
Yeah.
Okay? Or the audience has to endow the animal with this. We only empathize, excuse me, we only empathize with emotion. And so if it's an animal, we just have to be able to see the emotion in there. That's all.
Yep. Is there a film or piece of animation you've seen recently or in the last couple of years that you feel has actually totally worked and really, I mean, many have.
Yeah.
But
one
in
of
particular.
my favorite films that I've seen in the past couple of years is from Brazil. And it's called Boy and the World.
Okay.
And
Yep.
it's by, the director's name is Ale Abreu. The movie cost $500,000 to make, and they did it with 15 animators.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is it that worked?
It's an amazing accomplishment because it's 2D.
Yep.
It looks like it was made with a box of crayons and a straight edge. The story involves a 7-year-old boy who's lives on a farm, and his father becomes an itinerant worker. and the boy runs away from home to go find his father. And he sees the world for the first time because he's never been off the farm. And it's the world that we adults have created, complete with all of the commercials and marketing and soldiers and factories and pollution and everything. And we see in this movie this 7-year-old boy seeing these things for the first time. And some of them he understands what they are, and some of them he doesn't.
Right.
And it's very touching, it's very moving. I think it's an extraordinary accomplishment, and it's one of the best movies I've seen. I recommend it very highly. Boy and the World.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Now, I expect you're going to say to this question, it doesn't matter. But is there a difference in animating characters, humans perhaps, and making sure that your acting comes through to them, whether you're animating in 2D versus 3D?
No, it doesn't matter. Nor does it matter if it's stop motion.
Right.
You animate the thought.
Yeah.
You got to animate the thought. There's a story that I tell in my classes sometimes, which you might be interested in. Back when they were doing the first Lord of the Rings, Gollum's face was all keyframed.
Yes.
Because the facial capture had not been perfected. The technology was not ready. So it was all keyframed. And they did something which I thought was amazing. You know what the page of a movie script looks like?
Yes.
Okay. What they did was they reformatted the pages of Gollum's scenes. And they pushed onto the right-hand side of the page all of the dialogue, leaving the left-hand side blank. And then they wrote in the left-hand side Gollum's thoughts.
Oh.
And then they animated the thoughts.
Right.
Now,
right.
I don't know why everybody doesn't do that.
Because it offers a psychological view into the character, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah.
Animate the thought. Every animator has heard this. Animate the thought.
Right.
But it's so easy to start animating movement, and it's very difficult to animate a thought. What does a thought look like? It has to do with the way the eyes move. It has to do with blinking. It has to do with the way the eyeball itself is working. It has to do with your mouth. It's very difficult to animate a thought.
Yes.
But that's what they did with Gollum.
Right. Fascinating.
And I think it's a really great lesson, and I think everybody ought to do it. Animate the thought. And another one, in a class that I taught earlier today, in fact, here at THU, I showed 1934 animation from Disney called Playful Pluto.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay,
I
you know
it.
this one.
Yeah.
Okay. In the section of that animation, that cartoon, where Pluto gets the flypaper caught on his nose, animation history turns a corner right there.
Why is that?
Yes, because they storyboarded that.
Okay.
And it was the first use of a storyboard in animation.
Right.
That one section where Pluto gets caught with the flypaper. If you look at the rest of that cartoon, Playful Pluto, it's typical early animation with the characters jumping around and moving in funny ways, and Mickey steps on a rake and it hits him in the head, all of that. When Pluto gets caught on the flypaper, suddenly we see him thinking, how do I get it off? He plays an action. Now it's on this paw. And so he tries to kick it off on the other paw. Now it's on that paw. We can see him mentally grappling with this flypaper. What do I do? He finally gets it off. It flies into the air, goes to the ground, and then he sits on it. Now it's on his rear end.
Yeah.
It's all thoughts.
What is it about the storyboarding that allowed that to happen? Is it just that there was more literally thought and pause
Yeah.
in it?
My understanding is that Disney had been asked to do comic books out of Mickey Mouse
Right.
at that time. And they had hired a comic book artist, not an animator. They
Right.
hired a comic book artist who was on the studio, and his job was to make the Mickey Mouse comic books. And he was between comics. He was sitting around.
Yeah.
And they said, well, why don't you, and they gave him that sequence, and they said, why don't you do something with this? And he did. He made a comic book out of it, that sequence. And then instead of a comic book, they took the panels and put them up, stuck them up. And that became the first storyboard.
Yes.
And
Wow.
they used that as a reference when they started animating. And of course, with a comic book, you're going to get these frames that have the thoughts. And so, as soon as they put this into animation, they looked at it and they said, wow, wow. And then we were off to the races.
Yeah, right.
After that, the Disney company started using storyboards for everything.
Amazing. I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
that's an incredible story.
yeah.
Okay. So, Ed, people who want to find out more about acting for animation, are your workshops done regularly? Is it just depend on where you're traveling in terms of a conference or something like that?
People
or-
invite me.
Right.
I teach for studios. I teach for schools. I have a website.
Yes.
I'm easy to find. I'm at edhooks@edhooks.com.
Easy.
And but I go where I'm invited, and
Yes.
I've been very fortunate to be invited to. I've taught for most of the major studios, most of the major video game companies. We're in September now, and in November I'll be in Warsaw at CD Projekt Red.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah, I've taught for Valve, for Ubisoft, for Electronic Arts, for Blizzard, for so many, Epic. I've taught for them several times, and also for at the various studios. So and at many schools.
Right.
You're looking at a very lucky guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very jealous. Actually.
Nobody gets to do what I do.
And this is the first time you've been at Trojan Horse, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What's your first thoughts about it?
Well, how wonderful is this?
Yeah.
I mean, really, to put creative people together and to lower all the barriers. So there was one thing they say in the program. It says, talk to your heroes. Well, how wonderful is that?
Yeah.
They don't separate. I'm a knight here. That's
Yep.
what I am. I'm a
Yep.
knight.
Yep.
And they told me coming in, you mix with everybody else.
Yep.
You just don't go off by yourself. You're not isolated. You're not above everybody. We want people to talk to you. We want them to interact with you. Great, wonderful. To me, you take a lot of creative people, you put them in one place, and you give them a framework, and you say, talk to each other. See what you can come up with. Wonderful. It's not just animators here. There's a lot of different kinds of people.
Oh, absolutely. And that is probably one of my favorite bits of the conference is the mix of design, concept art, illustration, visual effects, CG. I mean, I could go on. Game design. Like, it is really a plethora of people, isn't it? You know?
I agree.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just marvelous.
Yeah.
And here we are in this idyllic kind of a place. You know,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful place to be
Yeah.
here in Portugal. And everybody is really on fire.
Which is amazing. You just told me before we began that you've moved to Portugal.
I do.
Yeah.
My wife and I live in Lisbon,
Yeah, not very far away.
not
No.
very far away.
Yeah.
We lived in California. We
Right.
lived in Los Angeles. And earlier this year, we picked up and moved to Lisbon, Portugal.
So quickly, why did you do that?
Well, my sense is that the animation industry is becoming more international.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting projects that cost less money, that are targeted to narrower audiences. The platforms are changing. The techniques, the technology is developing very fast. Also, Hollywood, Hollywood is wonderful, but they have commercialized animation, really.
Sure.
And
Yep.
we've come to a place where, as admirable as they may be, the Disney company and Comcast, those two companies alone, now are controlling or own something probably close to 90% of American-made feature animation. And both of them are really in the merchandising business.
Sure.
Well, I think of animation as an underused art form, and for storytelling, not for merchandising. I don't have anything against what they're doing in Hollywood. However, it's very exciting to me what I see happening internationally. And Lisbon sits at the front door of Europe. It sits at the front door of a lot of activity. There right now are 25 feature animated films in production in Europe,
Right.
with an average budget of around 10 million euro. Okay, and there's another 25 in development. This is so exciting, and I want to be a part of it. I want
Yeah.
to do it.
And Lisbon's not a bad place to be to do it, is it?
Lisbon is not bad at all.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. And your talk is later in the week, or another one of your talks.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm doing 4 talks this
Oh,
week.
really? Wow.
I've already done 2, and I have 2 more.
Well, they make you work for it, don't they?
They do, but it's my opportunity. It's a great privilege for me.
Yeah.
We've got yesterday and today we had, I think, maybe 125 people in there that I was
Right.
talking to, and honestly, I'm not kidding when I say that I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to work with some of the most creative people in the world, and I get to come to places like Troya and THU. I get to talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I get to talk to you.
Well, this is, for me, I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah.
I really am.
Yeah. What, do you still learn about acting for animation?
Of course I learn.
Yep.
I learn all the time. I tell my students at the beginning of each class, I say, look, if I say something that you disagree with, that you can't see a purpose for it, get your hand up. Don't worry about interrupting me. Let's kick it around. And inevitably in my classes, I do have people that say, I disagree with you.
Right.
And I say, cool, why? And we'll right there in front of the class, we'll work it out. And having to enunciate things, having to formulate things is extremely educational for me. I'm continually connecting the dots,
Right.
continually expanding.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Ed, it's been so good talking to you. Thank you so much again.
Oh,
And,
man,
hope
thank
to hang out
you.
with you further in the week.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, world.
Awesome.